Hello and welcome to First Contact, the world's first podcast where we openly discuss all things relating to humanity's preparation for open contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. I'm your host, Eesha Patel. If you are loving this content, please be sure to join us in the First Contact Facebook community and let us know what you think. Let's dive into another exciting episode of First Contact. Hey everyone, welcome to First Contact. So today we have Frank Kimbler. Some of you may have seen him on Ancient Aliens. That's how I came across Frank and his work. And we're very excited to have him here today because Frank actually lives in Roswell. And so he's actually gone and done expeditions where through his scientific work, he's gone and found bits of metal and various pieces of artifacts. So I'm really keen just to dive in today into some of Frank's work to really pick his brains around what he's found and what his opinions are. So Frank, thank you so much for being here today and welcome to our show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad that you asked me to come on and talk with you.
Of course, I just got so excited because when I watched the episode about you went out with a bunch of people on an expedition and you actually found some pieces of metal, I thought, geez, I mean, if they're still finding stuff 75 years later, like that says something, whether or not, there was anything to that, you can tell us now what the lowdown was. But the fact that these expeditions are still happening, I was like, man, there's definitely got to be some truth in there. So tell us a little bit about this research that you've done and what you've discovered so far.
All right. Well, this is an ongoing process. This is when I first got to Roswell, New Mexico. It was probably 6 months before I even went into the International UFO Museum, which is right here in Roswell, and it's the second largest UFO library and research center in the world. The largest one, believe it or not, is the Vatican. They have a much larger UFO library than we do here. But as I was walking through the library, I noticed that there was no physical evidence. There was lots of eyewitness accounts and lots of storytelling by people that lived back then in 1947. So I decided to use my knowledge of geology and science to see if I could actually find some pieces. So the idea was that to look at old aerial photographs, to look at the runoff from the terrain, and then I'm pretty good with a metal detector. So I took my metal detector out to the crash site and went out the first day and found nothing after sweeping the metal detector around for 6 or 8 hours. But then the second day that I went out there, towards the end of the day, after about 6 hours of metal detecting, I found a tiny little piece. I thought my heart was going to jump because you get a little beep in the headset on the metal detector. And the end result was there was this little piece of metal. And the scary part is it blew out of my hand. And when I picked it up and looked at it, and it took me a few minutes to find it because it was very light, very thin. And then I started looking around to see if the black helicopters were going to come and like take me away or something. And you get kind of paranoid at that point. But I just put it in a bottle, and then I took a bunch of pictures of it and took it down to the International UFO Museum. And I says, we need to have this tested. That was the start of this journey. And since then, I have found over 30 fragments of material. Granted, some of it was trash, but you can tell that because it's on the surface and it's very, very shiny. And then some of it's buried really deep. And some of the more exciting finds were finding some military buttons from the time, from right around 1947. And those military buttons, those were bona fide proof that the military had been out there digging around on their hands and knees looking for bits of metal, the same thing that I was doing. I have not yet proved that it's of extraterrestrial origin, but what I have is I have some materials that are anomalous. In other words, they need further testing. In order to prove something scientifically, you have to have 3 independent laboratories confirm the exact same results. Well, I can get ones and I can get maybe half of the second one. And then what happens is the material either gets destroyed or it gets lost or something happens. And that is the story of Roswell. Currently, myself and Chuck Sikowski, who is another UFO investigator, his website is ufonut.com. In the last couple of months, we found almost a dozen pieces out at the website, and some of it's been documented for an upcoming, was filmed for an upcoming documentary that's going to be on YouTube. It's going to YouTube series. and it's coming up in August. That's going to be pretty exciting because I've only found material on camera twice. Once was with the Discovery Channel, I believe, and the other one was with this group. So it's pretty exciting to have that happen, because it just means that, hey, it's not just my word, but there's people around me that have seen me pick this stuff up. And so right now we have some of that material that is being investigated by a whole group of people. And I hope to get some kind of results back in the next couple of weeks to let us know what's going on, to find out exactly what it is.
Beautiful. I love that. So hopefully by the time the documentary comes out, you'll have some more concrete results one way or another as to what this may be.
I did some isotope work about 10 years ago. And let me tell you something about isotopes. Isotopes are like your thumbprint. They can indicate where that metal is from. And they can tell you whether it's from Earth, from the moon, from Mars, or from some other place. And because it's a very distinct signature. And what happened was the first piece, which was the piece that I told you about that I first found, ended up being like what's called a 6000 series alloy. It shouldn't be out there. And let me explain that just a little bit, the science behind this. The 1000 series is aluminum foil, like you wrap up sandwiches in your house. The 3000s are the sides of aluminum cans. 5000s are the tops of aluminum cans, but 6000 series alloys shouldn't be out there. And they certainly shouldn't be in thin foil-like fragments. And that's what has been found out there, is that 6000 series alloy, which is kind of exciting because that stuff is generally used to build aircraft carriers and giant in ships and girders on bridges, and it should not be sitting out in the middle of the desert. So I had some isotope work done on it, and it came back as being anomalous and got everybody excited. But then I tried to get two other labs, and we lost most of that specimen. I'm going, well, I'm not doing this again, because I had a piece disappear when I shipped it through FedEx. It got to the lab, Arizona State University, got to their lab, they opened it up, and it was sealed. There was 3 times. It was sealed, package within a package within a package, and taped up. And that story is out on the internet under my name. FedEx package with Frank Kimbler's material disappears in transit. And it did. They opened it up. There was nothing in the package, which kind of scared me, because I've had black cars pull up at the house not lately, but early on when I first started doing this, the typical dark color. And I had laser lights dancing in my house, and that's used to monitor basically conversations off of windows and stuff. And I'm going, what the heck is going on with this? And my computer's been hacked into. So I had early on, nothing recently, nothing within the last probably 6 or 7 years has been going on. But boy, early on, I will tell you that it was getting kind of scary. A friend of mine I had a data disk with all of the information on it, and I sent it for safekeeping to him and a couple of other places. And he had his house was ransacked, and they tore his house apart, and the only thing that they retrieved was the disc. And this is a true story. Wow. They took the disc. Now what I do is I publish everything as fast as I get it. I don't keep any secrets of any kind. So everything is now basically public knowledge, and I shove it out onto the internet, social media, as fast as I can possibly get it. Then I don't have to worry about people stealing anything or anything else. So I ended up getting the isotope work done. The isotope was anomalous. It actually showed that it could possibly be of extraterrestrial origin. And the issue with it was that the equipment was not, the error margin on it was too high. So it was sitting right at the edge of being alien or being not. So there was like a 50-50 chance. It drove me crazy. So like I said, tried to get it tested again, and we lost most of that sample. I still have a little bit of it left, but I'm waiting to see if the current analytical people that are going to be looking at it can make a determination for me. So that's where it stands. I've got material from the Roswell crash, and people need to realize that. And I'm probably one of the few people that has this material. So, and it's been featured like on Ancient Aliens and Discovery Channel, CW Network. And I don't have any books. I have no books out there. It's all either internet or out on Facebook or through the documentaries.
Wow, that's incredible. I am interested in some of these sort of scary experiences that you had, because I mean,
you know, I guess it's easy to speculate that that would assume that it is something, because otherwise, why would you have people trying to take it away from you?
You know, and that's true. My neighbors chased that one car away. They actually pulled up in front of my house, dark colored, typical black government vehicle. They didn't say anything. And my neighbors saw them and they actually rolled the window down because my neighbor was in the front yard. And they said, "Is that where Frank Kimbler lives?" That's what they asked. And they said, "I don't know. And you don't need to know." And then they just rolled up their window and drove off. So I have my neighbors watch out for me. They told me about it, and that was nothing happened after that. And that was kind of a scary experience because you never know. So it's very careful. And then the thing about the laser was really weird. We have I'm sitting in what's called our media room, and our media room has a big on this side. You actually see the edge of it right here. It's a big place where we can project basically Netflix and videos and things like that. It's kind of cool. It's like watching, it's a big screen is what it is. And the family was all sitting in here watching a Disney movie. And my son said, "What the heck is that?" And I'm going, "What?" And I look behind me on the wall, the dark wall back here. And here is this laser light dancing around on the wall. And I'm going, "What the heck is this?" All right. So all around it's sealed. There's no way that anything can come in. And the only thing is directly in front of me, which is a big window. And that window was just slightly open, just a little bit. And that's the only place that a laser light could have come in. So I immediately ran outside, and so did my son, because I knew what it was. Being a scientist, I ran outside and we looked around, and it didn't come from the neighbors. I thought maybe it might be neighbors' kids playing around with little laser lights. But the only place, the angle coming in, the only place that it could have come from is across the farmland, the field, on the other side, and that's almost 2 blocks away. So that is the only place that that laser light could have come from. And why they would be shining it on the house, I don't know. I do know that that spies use laser light reflected off of windows to record conversations. They pick up those vibrations on the windows. And that's one of the first things that went through my mind in reference to that. So I've taken precautions against that, but nothing like that has happened since. And then right after that was when my friends, when the disc was stolen and from his house. And then other than that, now everything is really secure, and I haven't had any problems since then. Computer was hacked once, but it was whoever it was. I think it was just kids trying to get into it because they weren't very good at it. My son works IT, so he knows how to fix things. And then a friend of mine's in the Air Force, retired from the Air Force, and he worked cybersecurity, and he told me how to take care of cyber threats on computers. So I didn't have any trouble getting rid of it. Sure made a mess though for a while. I didn't lose any data or anything. So, but it was like I said, now I put everything out as fast as I get it, and it becomes public knowledge. And that's the way, in my honest opinion, all UFO research should be made public as fast as it comes in. It should be basically out there so that everybody can see it. No, you don't want to keep this stuff secret. It's too important to the world, which is why I applaud the whistleblowers, because they're telling people that we have alien technology. I applaud what has recently has been done with I think his name is Avi.
Avi,
Loeb. Yeah,
yeah,
Avi.
yeah. We actually
Avi,
had him on an earlier episode. He told us all about his research. It's very fascinating.
yeah, it is the Galileo project, I believe, is what is
Yes.
working
Yeah.
in. And now
Amazing.
the government of Papua New Guinea, if I remember correctly, is trying to get the material back because he supposedly crossed over international boundaries and took it from the bottom of the ocean, and they want it back. Of course, anytime something comes out as being what might be of alien technology or something very strange, everybody wants to get their hands on it as fast as possible because they don't want to lose out. I mean, just think what would happen if it was if Papua New Guinea happened to have a piece of an extraterrestrial spacecraft that belongs to them, they just make a sudden leap into higher technology than anybody else. So it falls into that whole wonderful thing of here in the United States, we call it national security. I don't know. I think I call it insanity is what I call it, because other countries are a little more open than we are.
Well, I think that is one of the biggest concerns in the whole process of disclosure. I think people are very, small-minded when it comes to this idea of national security. And I do see it mostly with the Americans. We don't have the same sort of attitudes here in Australia that I've seen with some of the Americans I've spoken to. And it is a very like patriotic sort of culture in America. And whether that's good or bad, I mean, is very, I think, questionable in my mind, because, I think that as a human race, if we actually dissolved some of those boundaries and stop trying to fight each other all the time and trying to be the best at everything, we might actually advance together. And this is actually one of the things I love about Avi Loeb's perspective on it. He just thinks we all need to unify and just put everything out there and stop keeping secrets, And I think he's very sensible in that regard.
That is put everything out there and don't keep any secrets, and that's the way it should be. I'm just imagining that if we do have technology, and if these are a lot of what ifs, but there seems to be enough people out there to say that we do have some alien technology kind of tucked away, hidden away somewhere. What if it revolutionizes our energy production? What if it revolutionizes our medicine? What if it puts us in a position where we advance and help people? What a fine world we would have. But there's always that problem with the buck. If there is free unlimited energy available, what is that going to do to the oil companies? All right, it's going to literally put them out of business. What's it going to do to the petroleum industry? What's it going to do to the people that generate electricity? If we have medicines that are so advanced that we can cure everything and we can live to be 150 or 200 years old or even more, what if all those things came true simultaneously? What would that do to society? We'd have to rewrite a lot of books and a lot of things on that, and that goes into the realm of kind of like Star Trek, like the Utopia Society, where there's really no such thing as poor people. You basically work and you do what you like to do, and hope that it benefits everybody in the universe at the same time. That was the premise behind the storyline on Star Trek, was that it was in fact a Utopia Society. They didn't work for money. They worked for the betterment of everything. And it's not communist. That was because everybody got fed. Nobody worked for the government. You work to do your own thing. And that's, I think people are afraid of that, or at least some people are afraid of that thing happening if we disclose that kind of technology that's out there.
Right, because the biggest thing that society would have to give up is its power structures. And at the moment, the power structures keep everything in place. They fundamentally form the functionality of our society. And I think people are very scared of what would happen. Well, some people are scared. The ones who are currently benefiting from the current system are very scared about what would happen, whereas I think everyone else is kind of like, what, it's about high time everyone just got on board. So I do understand,
I agree with
the
that.
political and sort of societal reasons why it has been kept quiet. But I also know that it's time for that to stop. I mean, I'm a direct contactee myself. So I have quite a bit of knowledge and understanding as to what's happening in that space. And the biggest message that I keep getting is that it's time for humanity to unify, because as long as we're in our little borders with our countries and our continents and our, suburbs and whatever other borders we put up, our race, our gender, whatever else, borders we put up, none of those borders are actually real from that high perspective. And when those borders dissolve, whether they're physical or racial or anything else, when all of those borders dissolve, what's left is this shared understanding that you and I are fundamentally not so different, and And when we actually realize that, I think that gives an opening to actually start embracing this idea that if we can exist, maybe there's other beings out there that exist as well. And I mean, I believe they've been visiting us for a very long time. I don't think Roswell is the only time. I don't think it was the first time, and it certainly isn't the last, So I think there's a lot more to it, but humanity needs to actually be prepared to lose the power structures and come into this unified field of consciousness so we can actually go back to being in connection with everything else that's out there.
I agree with that. The Native Americans and most tribal people all over the world believe, the Aborigines believe in that. Our Native Americans believe in that. I don't think you can go to any of the peoples that are groups, we'll just call them tribal people. They all have the same beliefs in that notion. And I think that's very true, what you say. So it's out there because they know the way that it should be, and that's exactly what it is. We should all get along, and and we should all advance and put away our own biases towards a lot of things. It shouldn't be like that. It's not going to hurt religion. A lot of people say it's going to disrupt our foundations of religion. That's not true, because even the Vatican and other religious groups on the planet admit to the fact that there could be life on other worlds. They don't deny that, not at all. So it's not going to hurt anything.
Well, you mentioned that the Vatican has the largest UFO library. I mean, why do you
They
think that
do.
might be the case?
Oh, they also have they like to look at space. I think they've got 6 very powerful telescopes that peer into the universe. They have their own group of scientists. They know they know the heartbeat of the world, and they know what's going on, because they know that now, I'm a spiritual person, I'm not a religious person, but they know that God created everything, and they understand that, and they also know that having a good knowledge of the universe keeps them well informed as to what's going on, and that includes visitations from aliens or other civilizations. And I am absolutely sure that they keep track of all of that, and that's the reason why they keep their pulse on what it would do.
You mentioned the heartbeat of the earth. Is that the Schumann resonance that you're referring to?
No, you know what? Heartbeat of the earth is what the foundations of I don't know. It goes back to that whole Native American or tribal thing. It's what the core beliefs of the world. And let's get away from all the little religions where people fight over their because religious wars have been hideous throughout time. But let's go to the very core foundations, and let's keep things very, very simple. Nature, people, how nature and people get along. I mean, we're already destroying the planet. Maybe the aliens realize this. I have no idea. They could, and I'm sure they probably do, and they know that it needs to stop, and we need to clean our act up. So the pulse of the earth is the general, call it the general foundation, that is the basis for what I think most people deep down truly believe. That's where that idea comes from.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you're actually based in Roswell. So I'm going to take a guess and say that you've probably spoken to a lot of people. You've probably seen a lot of things. Have you met anyone who, as a first or second-hand witness, was involved at the time?
Yes, I have met Jesse Marcel Jr., not senior. I actually spent about 5 or 6 hours with him in a car, and then walking around out at the debris field. It was wonderful talking with him, because he was a colonel in the military, very centered, down to earth person. I believed everything he saw, the material that his dad brought home. He's the one that saw the I-beams, and was holding the I-beams up that had writing on it. And he saw the I-beams. He saw the material in his house that his dad brought home. He was also taken, his book is, he gave me a copy of his book. His book is well written, and the book outlines what he saw when he was young and all of the things that he had been through, being also as a military person. And when he met people in Washington, and they basically told him, they say, yeah, we know that Roswell was true. It's all in his book. And I believed believed his story. I showed him some of the material that I had found. He says, Frank, that looks a lot like some of the stuff that I saw sitting on the kitchen table. And you know what that did for me? That's what I'm going, cha-ching. Okay, fine. I got somebody that actually saw this. So, and then what was really sad was he passed away no more than, I would have to say, maybe 2 months after that. And I have been on and off in touch with his family, on and off a little bit for various things. Great group of people. I dearly loved Jesse Marcel Jr. He was great. So I met him, and then the only other person that I met, which was a eyewitness account for that at a very young age, was a lady by the name of Frankie Rowe. Now, according to her story, her grandfather was on a fire truck, and the fire truck actually drove out on Pine Lodge Road and drove out to the crash site because it was on fire. And then, of course, they got run off out there. Apparently, she saw some of the material as well, and she always cried because she was threatened at a young age. They said if they actually took her in, this is her story, they took her into the back room of their house, and the military people said that if you tell anybody what you saw, you'll find your mom and dad buried out in the desert, dead. And can you imagine having somebody that's 10 or 11 year old person get told that by the military? And people are already coming out of World War II. They were already kind of paranoid and scared anyway. But every time she told that story, she would cry. She's been on lots of documentaries and lots of stories. And you know what? There's some people that say that she made that up. But you know what? I don't think so. Was very, very emotional. She was like one of the last people that lived. And she died a few years ago as well. So she's not around anymore. So I was lucky enough to have met two. Now, I will admit that she saw the material, and when I showed it to her, I took some of the material that I had, and she says, well, this is not exactly what I saw. And so now I've got two different things going on. But she's very sweet, very warm-hearted, and I think that she was a very honest lady about the stories that she told. And I believe her. So you know what? I believe that a craft crashed out there in the desert. I believe that the government covered it up. I found military buttons out there that are from like the 40s. So I have some of those in my possession. So I can prove that the military was out there. And from aerial photographs, I can see that a lot of things have been changed over time. And that's my job as a geologist. I can pretty well tell whether things have been messed up or not over time just by looking at the aerial photographs. So I believe their stories. I believe Roswell is a true event. I believe that it was something that scared the absolute daylights out of our military and our government. They didn't know what to do or what to think of it. And they tried their darndest to cover it up, which they basically made a laughing stock of themselves. Most of the UFO researchers know that the government has lied, and they continue to lie about Roswell. Maybe, I hope, one day it will come out. I don't know. It's all part of this disclosure thing if it comes, and I think it will come. It's just very slow in the process. With all the sightings that have been out there from the Nimitz, the very first ones, the stuff that Lou Elizondo said, and the stuff that was Mike Gresh, I think that's his name, whistleblower. All this is great stuff, and it's all going to lead to something, I hope, soon.
Well, I mean, things have I guess the landscape has changed quite drastically in the disclosure space in the last couple of years, because now they're actually calling these people forward and they're willing to hear about it. You've got, the congressional hearings that are happening. So I think there's definitely movement. But even then, I'm hearing from some people that, oh, it's another Roswell. They're gonna do a little bit of stuff around it. Then it's gonna be like Project Blue Book all over again. They're gonna shove it all aside and just try and cover it all up. So it's a bit hard to say at this point, but at the same time, I mean, I know enough people who've just gone outside, looked up at the sky and seen stuff. Like, I mean, it's going to get to a point where it just gets ridiculous. Like, the government can't keep saying everything is a weather balloon or everything is a swamp gas or whatever they're telling these days, because people are going to look up in the sky, they're going to see these things and they're going to realize what they've seen, and I think that
And
is the best evidence, really.
it is the best evidence. The Tic Tac event and several of the other gun sight videos from the our aircraft, watching these things fly at incredible speeds, make right angle turns, fly with no wake, no exhaust, no nothing, using technology that we don't even have. And the thing is, our and I have to laugh, our military, our government, they won't say, oh, these are, we don't know what they are, but we're not going to claim that they're extraterrestrial. So then if they're not extraterrestrial and they think that they might be our adversaries, we're in trouble because we'll lose that battle. That technology is way too high. We can't keep up with them. So I think I think they're confused. I think our government says, oh, all right, we got these gun sight videos that are out there that shows these crafts that can fly like that have technology that we have no idea how they're working. They have no exhaust, no heat signatures, no nothing. They just fly, and they fly very well. They can also dive into the water at incredible speeds without tearing apart. So that in itself is a miraculous feat. So I know people that work on that, the underwater side of this. I know people that investigate that, and they have seen some incredible things as well. I've seen a UFO myself at a distance. Objects do not make right angle turns in the sky, and I saw something at Ute Lake State Park here in New Mexico when I was very young. I was on a cross-country road trip and sitting around a campfire, and a friend of mine said, oh, look up there, there's something really weird. So I says, oh, it's a satellite. And he says, no, watch it very carefully. And I watched this object make these zigzags across the sky and then zoom. And I looked at him and I'm going, okay, I think we just saw our first UFO. It's the first time I ever saw one.
Very cool.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty awesome because, like I said, things don't make right angle turns. I've got a pretty open mind about a lot of stuff, so I don't hold anything back. And they could be extraterrestrial, they could be interdimensional, they could be lots of things. And I want to know, and that's why all these little artifacts that I have, and I will continue the search. I'm not going to stop with just Roswell. I'm going to go out and hunt other things as well. I've been to a number of other crash sites here in New Mexico, some of which are kind of fake, kind of because I know from a scientific perspective that they're, at least parts of the story are not true. Parts of it might be, and I don't like researchers that go out there and embellish things without having some good science behind it. So that's what irritates me more than anything else. People that are in it for the buck. You'll notice that I don't have any books out there, and yeah, I do a few conferences and stuff, and what I get paid for the conferences just barely covers the cost of me going to the conferences and talking about them and stuff. So other than that, I don't make anything out of it. I'm hoping that somebody will come forward to me and say, hey, you know what, I've got a piece of an alien spacecraft that my grandmother's had for 100 years or whatever, and it's been sitting in her box, and I'm going to send you a piece of it so you can have it analyzed. I'd love to have people do things like that, to come forward and say, hey, I've got stuff. They need not to be scared. People need to come forward, like the whistleblowers. I don't know about your family, but every time my parents or grandmother, every time they took a trip, they'd bring back little trinkets and stick them in their jewelry box. So you know what? I suspect I have things in my wife has things in her jewelry box that she's collected from trips that we've made. So I suspect that there's some old cowboy out there or some person in another part of the world that has a little piece of this stashed away and they're just scared. They don't want to bring it forward. And I think they should, especially if they've got a really good story behind it. I think everybody should come forward. If everybody did that, I think I think the world would change and we'd be in a wonderful, better place. I really do.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I sincerely hope that more of this evidence does exist. I do know that, for example, Tom Carey and his team spoke to over 600 first and second-hand witnesses, so
I know
I had
Tom.
a great chat with him recently as well. I'm excited to air that episode because, I mean, there's so much out there already, and this is not even the hidden stuff. This is the stuff that people have willingly brought forward and said, here, this is what I have, I just think that the fear, it really has kept people from speaking up. But I think, again, that landscape is changing because now people are actively asking for it. The only downside is that because it's been so many decades, it's like most of the people who were there at the time aren't even alive anymore. So
That's
it's all
very true.
secondhand witness sort of stuff now. And then it's, that loses credibility. It's almost like it was done intentionally. The government was like, oh, just give it 75 years. They won't be around anymore and we can just carry on for another 75 and we'll be none the wiser, But I think that even with the secondhand evidence, there's still enough there to suggest that there was some form of cover-up. And I think it's quite funny where the government and the military or whoever it was that's covering up, where they shot themselves in the foot was they were so aggressive about it. Like if it was nothing, then why threaten everyone? Because now
right.
all of these stories are coming forward and people are like, well, I got threatened and I had black car show up. And you're not the first person that's told me that. I've had plenty of interviews where people have said the same thing. So I'm like, well, if it was nothing, if it was just a weather balloon, then why go knocking on everybody's doors and tell them to hush it up,
That's very, very true. By the way, I know all of these really, really good ufologists that are out there. You mentioned Tom Carey. I know him very well. He's a friend. Don Schmidt,
nice.
he's a friend. The late Stanton Friedman, he was an acquaintance. Didn't know him very well, but we spent many, many hours talking together. So I know lots of the UFO researchers that are out there. There's a young UFO researcher that does a lot of work off the coast of Catalina Island. That's Brittany Barbieri. And I've spent some time talking with her about her research that she has done too. But I know these people, and they feed me information. They tell me all kinds of cool things. And I've met, I spent a little bit of time, but not a lot, talking to Lou Elizondo. Because he sat next to me at a conference. I think I spent a whopping 15 minutes. He had so many people surrounding him that it was crazy. So I didn't get a chance to talk to them, but I've had a few dealings with the old To the Stars Academy. Hal Puthoff did some of my original, and he's been nominated for a Nobel Prize in physics and worked on all kinds of top secret, very strange products. But Hal Puthoff he did some of the original analysis of materials that I had. Didn't like what they did. That was at his Earth Tech Labs in Austin, Texas. But he has supported me in my future endeavors and said, hey, a lot of you get the debunkers that are out there, and he has actually come forward and said, hey, you need to leave Frank alone because he does good science. And getting that from such a world-renowned scientist, when somebody says something like that to me, I'm going, oh, okay, I must be doing something right because I'm recognized for that. So I just want to keep that going as far as research is concerned. But the researchers, I freely give them what I know, and I help them with stuff. I know that Don Schmidt is working on when the Roswell. There's a place called the Skip site, which is where I go. That's also called the debris field. But there was supposed to have been, according to witnesses, an escape pod that came out of that thing. And it landed on the old Martin Ranch. And right now, and that's private property, but right now that is the focus of Don Schmidt's research as well as mine. and we have access to that. And we don't have to worry about the Bureau of Land Management trying to shut us down or confiscating materials or anything like that. But that's fun. I'm still waiting. I know that they're going to be doing some more work on that, and they're going to more than likely make like a documentary out of it or whatever. So, but anyway, it's kind of cool. Got a whole bunch of good people working on that. Don does excellent work, and then we've got Ben Hansen from Fact or Fake. Will probably be on board with that, and along with a number of other people that are ufologists that are known in the field. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's incredible. Yeah, it shows that you've put a lot of time and energy into getting to the bottom of this. I am curious as to why, whether it's just a passion project for you or whether there's something else in that. What's your motivation?
You know what? There was a guy out there. Do you remember the story that went global? The guy's name was Forrest Fenn. Hid a multi-million-dollar treasure up in the mountains and wrote a book called Thrill of the Chase. And I have his book. And the Thrill of the Chase is all about going out and exploring and looking for things. And I've always liked to do that. I like to drive on old back dirt roads. When I was younger, I explored ghost towns, and I even like going to the junk stores and the Salvation Army to see what kind of treasures that people have accidentally thrown away. So we can call it the thrill of the chase. It's the same thing that drives people to climb to the top of Mount Everest, or to take a kayak down a river, or to go diving into a cave when they know they might die in the process, or to go to the bottom of the ocean in a craft to see what the Titanic looks like. These are true explorers, and I see myself as a true explorer. And so it falls into the category of being a treasure hunter, a prospector, somebody that wants to, and I have fun. It gets me out. And since I'm kind of a bookworm a little bit too, so I like to do the research, and I like to try to prove stuff up. That's what I do, and that's why I'm a teacher. I teach at the New Mexico Military Institute. I'm a associate professor of earth science there, and I also teach both high school and college at that school. And I like doing it. It's fun, and yeah, it's a passion. Some people say you got to be insane to go out and swing a metal detector around for 6 or 8 hours, and you do. You end up getting some very sore muscles. But you know what? The very first time that you hear a little ding in your headset or sound, you get this adrenaline rush, and it's the same rush that you get when people climb the mountains, or climb a mountain, or go diving in the ocean. So for me, looking for alien artifacts is an adrenaline rush. So it's fun, and it's a passion.
So it's your version of climbing Mount Everest.
It's my version of climbing Mount Everest, because it would kill me if I did that.
I love that. You mentioned something before that it could be extraterrestrial or it could be interdimensional. And you know what? I've had a lot of conversations around that same sort of topic, where people seem to be landing on this idea that maybe these extraterrestrial crashes, landings, craft, and beings are maybe not necessarily physical in the same way that we are. What are your thoughts on that?
You know what? And I've met lots of abductees, people that have been abducted, and I've heard their stories. And whether it's in their mind or actually happens when something goes through a wall, like ghosts go through a wall, or the aliens go through a wall, and they go through. There's something to that, because lots of people have the same kind of like the same similar stories, even under hypnosis. So in my honest opinion, I do think that there are things that we don't understand, and either they meaning the aliens have complete control of matter, which they probably do, because otherwise they couldn't get here, or they couldn't traverse the vastness of space. They have I've always told people that from a physics standpoint, there's something very simple that we're missing. And if we can get that understanding, we'll have free energy. We'll understand how matter is assembled and how it works the proper way instead of our classical physics. But there are some things out there, more than likely in the quantum science side, that we just don't quite understand. It's some of that stuff is almost like magic. Even when our scientists see it in the lab, they're going, "Oh, well, we don't have a real explanation, but it works." So there are some things that we don't understand, and it's that understanding is getting down to the atomic level and how these things interact with the universe that's around them. This idea of having electrons here and someplace else talk to each other, even though they're light years away instantaneously, that kind of thing it's called an entrainment. That is pretty amazing to be able to have that happen. And our scientists have actually proved that in a laboratory, that you can have instantaneous communication between objects in a lab and at distance. So that's all part of the quantum theory stuff. It's kind of cool. And I think this is where the whole idea of interdimensional and I won't say time travelers, but I think there's a distinct possibility that we could have that. In which case, it's going to be a hard thing to prove, especially looking back at some of the things that happened. The Battle of Los Angeles, which is well documented, where we shot at a UFO 1,500 rounds of anti-aircraft fire, and it did nothing to that object. That's a pretty cool story, and I've seen the original film for that the newspapers had their hands on. Now it belongs to a UFO researcher here and up in Albuquerque, and that stuff is amazing. So the only way that object could, and I'm speculating, and the only way, and this is just my thinking, that object could have been shot at that many times without being destroyed, is that if it was out of phase with our world. So if it was just out of phase, those bullets would do absolutely nothing except pass through it. But we'd still be able to see it. And that might be the case. It might sound crazy. I'm a very, very open-minded scientist, and I would look at all things. I'd love to go to Skinwalker Ranch. I've never been invited up there to actually see if some of that stuff is happening up there, but it would be kind of cool to experience a portal, something that opens up and things go in and out of it. I've never seen anything like that. I would love to see that and experience it, just so I can say, oh, not for the thrill of the adventure, but from the scientific aspect, because then it would be enough for me to try to figure out how that wormhole or how that portal opened up and how things are able to move back and forth between it. That would be some mighty cool science.
I've actually had a couple of experiences like that where I've seen things come and go from various points. There was one in particular where I took a photograph. I was in the bush. Now my journey into UFOs and ETs and everything came through spirituality and meditation. So I've come at it from a real like consciousness perspective, and that's where, you know, sometimes people don't really want to acknowledge that element of it, but I think it's a very important element, you know, because I learned how to connect with these beings through raising my vibration, which sounds very like new age and, you know, Tony Robbins almost, but that is how I did it. And so I was with a friend of mine, and we were out in the bush, and we were doing our meditative practices as we do, and took a photograph of this. It was just some logs, this like random archway made with logs in the bush. I don't know why it was there, who put it there, I have no idea, but we took a photo. And later on, when I looked at that photograph, you could see the phase shift. Like you could see the section in front of it and the section behind it. And there was a tree actually crossing in that line of the portal. And you could see that it was bent, like it was, you know, like like if you put something underwater, you get that sort of phase shift kind of effect happening, right? that's what it looked like. But it was all air, it was all the same medium, there wasn't any water involved, it wasn't raining, and you can distinctly see from one end of it to the other how the objects appeared visually different in this photograph. And I just looked at it and I thought, geez, like there's some sort of portal there. And then the same thing, similar sort of thing happened to me in a different occasion where I was looking up at the sky, but I wasn't seeing it physically with my physical eyes. I was seeing it through my third eye, or like visualization, right? But my eyes were open. I'm standing on this balcony and I literally saw this dimensional shift open up and a craft came through. Now, none of this was in physical. And I was with a friend of mine. I described her the shape of this UFO that I'd seen. It was very, very distinct. Like it had this kind of tail thing at the bottom, and it had this sort of like pyramid cone-like shape at the top. And I just kind of drew it and I said, this is roughly what it looks like. Now, the night before, another friend of ours had sent a photograph to her of a UFO that they had captured in the night sky that looked identical to the one I had just described. And I was like, you can't make that stuff up, and it wasn't like a standard UFO saucer. It wasn't something generic. It was a very, very distinct and unique shape. And exactly what I had described, seen come and go out of this portal in the sky, there was a photograph that was taken the night before in that exact same location in that vicinity. And I was just like, well, that just proves it. I mean, that means that whatever I was seeing through my consciousness is now being verified by something in the material realm. And I just thought, wow, so I think there's a lot more to it.
I do too. And by the way, I'm not laughing, I'm smiling, because this is the kind of stuff that, there's lots of individuals out there that call it foo-foo. It's not foo-foo. And the Native Americans and other tribal entities all over the world have been doing this for thousands of years, and they know, especially the Zuni tribes here in Arizona and New Mexico. They know this stuff. They have interactions with extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings practically on a daily basis. They've got pictures. I've seen these pictures. I know a good friend of mine showed me some pictures that he is, as a good friend of his is an elder in the tribe, one of the few remaining elders that are out there. And I've seen some amazing pictures that were taken. A little UFO landed, appeared by the side of the car, and they took a picture of it, but within a matter of seconds, long enough for the first picture to be taken and then another picture to be taken right after, it disappeared. But clearly it was a small UFO that landed next to the car in the rocks. It was there. I saw it. And then I says, what was the time frame between the pictures? And he said, oh, maybe 5 seconds, long enough to snap the picture. And I'm going, but wait a minute. And this was not faked, because the guy is he's an acquaintance, he's a friend, he is a UFO researcher. He used to work for the government as well on satellite imagery things. And I'm going, this is pretty amazing. And he showed me lots of pictures and talked about what he had learned from the Zuni elders about things that would pop in and pop out. And it doesn't scare them. They actually they say they've been doing this kind of stuff for thousands of years. It's all intertwined in their beliefs for their tribes. So it's part of the stories that they try to pass down to the younger generation, but the younger generation doesn't want to hear it. Isn't that's kind of, it's kind of sad. They don't want to pass down this tribal story. I would listen. I'm going, all right, fine, hook me up here. I want to I want to sit down with the elders there and experience some of this myself. Same thing with the Aborigines in Australia. I'd love to sit down with some of the elders. And
that one I have had the pleasure of doing, and I've had some pretty interesting experiences with.
I would love that. And besides that, I do know how to play the didgeridoo. I learned how to play that a long time ago. I'm not very good at it, but I can play it. And I'd love to sit down and play the didgeridoo with them and listen to the stories and talk to them. That would be very
You know,
enlightening.
there's something very interesting with the didgeridoo. Going a little off topic here, but I have a device. It's called the Music of the Plants device. It comes from a little town called Damanhur in Italy, and they're a spiritual community. Now, they spent 40 plus years researching the vibration of various plants, and they measured all of the different voltages and the different things that the plants gave off. So it's called a root to tip measurement. So they measure the difference between the root of like in the soil, and then they put a little clip on top of the plant and they measure that difference. So they get the electrical signal that runs like through that plant. And then what they did was they researched thousands upon thousands of plants, and they took those signals and they turned them into MIDI sound. So they found a way to convert it, and they put that algorithm into this device called the Music of the Plants device. And so I purchased one of these devices probably like 10 years ago now, and they had them in there's a place in Australia called the Crystal Castle. And so that's where I first heard this particular device. They did this Music of the Plants meditation, and I was like, what is this? And you know, the lady explained to me, she said that it's the plants playing the music. I'm like, what do you mean the plants playing the music? And so she, you know, explained how the whole thing worked. So of course I had to have one. So I got one ordered in. and what we realized, so a couple of years later, I used to run a wellness studio here in Perth. I used to run meditation classes. I used to run a lot of workshops and stuff around spirituality and wellness. And the people from Damanhur actually came and visited Perth. And they came to my studio, and we ran a Music of the Plants workshop at my place. And they were telling us the stories. And one of the stories they shared with us was that with this device, they were able to make these greenhouses in Damanhur. And their experiment was such that the plants would determine all the variables of the greenhouse. So when the water goes on, when the shades come off, when they want more sunlight, when they want more shade. But the funniest part was they used to take these tour groups of people into these greenhouses and show them the technology, and the plants would be controlling everything. So you wouldn't have anyone turning on taps. It was all automated, and the plants would just control their environment how they like it. But there was one particular time where there was a rowdy group of teenagers, and they were being a bit skeptical and, you know, a bit unruly. What happened was the plants locked the greenhouse so those people couldn't get in. And it was just like, how did they do that? You know, it really makes you think. And so I did my own set of experiments. I started running workshops at my own studio, and I got all these different plants and I hooked them up to this machine. And one of the things that these friends from Damanhur told me, they said that the plants, especially the trees in Australia, sound very different to other countries. Because when you have, say, like a European rose bush or something like that, it has a very sort of dainty, like high notes, like very sort of uplifting kind of music that they play. But when they hooked up this device to the Australian trees, they said it sounded just like a didgeridoo. And so I actually took this device to our local national park here, and I hooked it up to the trees, and it sounded like a didgeridoo. And so when you mentioned that, you know, you'd played the didgeridoo, I just wanted to share that with you, because the Indigenous people on some level know that that is the vibration of the land in this particular part of the world. And so when they play the didgeridoo, you know, they talk about the song lines, they're actually playing the vibration of the trees and the earth, which now, thanks to this device, has actually been proven that that is how they sound. Isn't that fascinating?
That is absolutely fascinating. You know, there's people that have that play the didgeridoo in Sedona, Arizona, which has a lot of spiritual connections to everything. And they have called they've gotten orbs that fly around when people play the didgeridoo in certain areas. So you know what, there's something to that. And I think what I should do, I think maybe I should go out and I haven't done this in a long time. I should go out into the desert and just play the didgeridoo and see what happens. That would be kind of cool.
That would be wonderful. I think the land would love that. I have my own fair share of stories from Sedona. Actually, I've been there as well. One particular gateway, I was there for the 7-7 gateway, and I do a bit of work with like grid lines and stuff, so I know kind of how that stuff works. And yeah, there were definitely starships there present at the time that I was there. And I mean, I don't know how much of this I can go into on this podcast, but maybe I'll just go all out. I don't know who's listening to this, but basically what I did was I shifted the vortex, this Sedona vortex, and I was guided, I'm very specifically guided to go there. And when I did my energy work that I was supposed to do, now we just had a week of complete like heat wave, not a cloud in the sky. People were literally, at that time that I was there, they were posting pictures of themselves putting eggs on fry pans and putting them on the sidewalk, because it was like 50 degrees, So I went out in this particular week in July 2017, and at 7 p.m. that night, I felt guided to go out and just do my meditation practice and to work with the energy of the land, which I did. 20 minutes later, I just get this very clear guidance. Okay, that's it. Stop now. And I had my eyes closed the whole time. I wasn't even paying attention to what was going on. But while I'd had my eyes closed in meditation, all these clouds had come in all around me, and they legit had this vortex of clouds above the Bell Rock that I'd just been working with, that specific vortex. And then, my guides were like, okay, it's time to go home now. And then like walking back to my hotel, this like thunder comes in and it starts bucketing down with rain. I just thought, geez, like we must have done some pretty powerful clearing on the land, But yeah, very, very powerful place. Lots of starship activity there as well. So yeah, it's amazing that you're so close to it.
Yeah, Bell Rock is I've been to the Bell Rock area many times. It's incredible. I could just sit down under and just listen to the world underneath the rocks there. It's kind of cool. I love it.
I almost went back there this year, but it didn't happen. It's a long story. Anyway, thank you so much, Frank, for sharing your stories with us. I mean,
You're welcome.
Work that you're doing, and I really hope somebody does give you that piece of evidence that you're looking for.
I would
really hope someone
that.
just hands it to you and says, here you go, this is what I've been holding on to, and that's the next big piece that we're all waiting for.
And you know what? They don't even have to give me a big piece. All they got to do is a little piece, because we can do so much science with so little. And I'll even, it won't get destroyed or anything. And I'm an honest person. I'll even send it back to them after we finish with the tests on it. That's all there is to it. So
let's put it out there. You never know. You never know.
You never know. But this has been a fun journey. I enjoyed talking with you very much.
Likewise. Thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to First Contact. I'm your host Eesha Patel, and I'm so excited to have this conversation about open contact with extraterrestrial beings. Come join me in the Facebook community where you can continue the discussion, or keep listening for another episode of First Contact.